Welcome to Foodytime. I'm Jay Fedigan, and one thing that fascinates me is hearing unexpected stories about food and wine, especially when it comes from places that you might not expect. Like Jonathan Alsop, the founder of the Boston Wine School. In episode 9, he told me a great story about his adventures on a wine trip to Uruguay.
For me, visiting this place that I had never visited before, I'd only tasted the wines of Uruguay maybe once or twice in my whole career. So the whole thing was nothing but discovery for me, which I really loved.
Who knew Uruguay made fabulous wines? Well, I guess John must have. Or Nikki Daigle, who back in episode 26 talked about growing up in Greece and how that led her to share this insanely good Greek forest honey she imports.
When people taste the honey, the expression typically on their face is one of joy. And that's really the whole point. If you are more intentional with the choices that you make and you really choose things that do offer something special in your everyday experience, it will make you happier. Right?
Couldn't agree with you more. No, you're absolutely right.
Keeping with that international flavor, in this episode, I'm taking you on a little trip to explore the world of Croatian wine and food with Mirena Bagur from the Croatian Wine Imports. We talked about the wines and regions and food, and quite honestly, I felt like I was getting a little taste of visiting Croatia without ever leaving my chair.
My name is Mirena Bagur, and I'm with Croatian Premium Wine Import.
I guess I'd like to know a little bit, before we get into Croatian wine and all that, just get a little bit of your own background and history. How did you get to be where you are? Because it seems like you've got a pretty fascinating background.
Yeah, so I have come to this country originally in the mid-'80s. I was in a student exchange program for a little bit and went back home and graduated and came back here to work with a company that I've done an internship with. I was an international trade major anyway, so I thought that an experience working in an American company would be good for me. And I moved back home, which is something that I fully planned on. And then the war there happened, so it really did not make sense to go back, knowing that I was the only ace to get my whole family out if need be. So it was not a decision lightly made, but and I was not happy with the fact that I was put in the situation that I had to make that decision. But as they say, the rest is history, and I'm very happy here now and having my two countries.
From what I've read in your childhood in Croatia, your grandfather was a winemaker. Is that right?
Yes. Although I need to preface that by saying that pretty much everybody in Dalmatia, in particular, uh, who has some land, ends up having enough of vineyards to produce wine for the family. And that's really the situation. It wasn't like it was a winery production. It was literally just a few barrels a year, family, and you go through one harvest to the next, hoping that there's enough wine from one year to another.
Yes, my grandfather was from southern Italy, and when I was growing up, he grew grapes in his backyard and made his own wine also. It's part of the culture.
It's almost like a hobby to all of the families there. It's also a sense of pride because everybody wants to create the best for themselves. But obviously, that's a totally different approach to winemaking than when somebody's doing it for commercial purposes, even if it's a boutique winery.
Sure. And how was your grandfather's wine, if you don't mind me asking?
It was okay.
My grandfather's was barely drinkable.
Well, first of all, I was a child when that's what was happening, so me sipping the wine would have been diluted with water.
Yeah.
And I didn't like it at the time, obviously. But what is interesting is that now there's a term called field blend, which makes it sound so, sophisticated. But essentially, what it really means is that they do a harvest on everything that happens to be in the vineyard and mix it all together and create wine. And most of the wine, the variety that grew in that area was Plavka, which is not even Plavac Mali. It's a variety of that. But he had some other plants in there that were like a Cabernet and whatever, and she just blended it all in, and so it was drinkable for your traditional family dinners. That's where I will keep it.
Yes, yes, my grandfather's wine was very similar to that.
Yeah.
Um, and I also read that you would ride along into the vineyards and help pick. And could you talk a little bit about what your childhood was like in Croatia?
Sure. I mean, harvest is a time, and there are a few other times actually in the year when one who owns vineyards, no matter how big they are, usually gets gathers family members or friends, and they go do together certain things like the green harvesting or the
The pruning.
no, it's not pruning isn't the first beginning of the year. It's like you prune the plant, you let it start growing branches, and then at some point in the middle between that branch and the core, there's another branch that comes out, and that's not gonna be good for the wine ultimately. So you actually need to go in and cut those out, or should just use it with a hand. Um, but at the times when a larger group of people is needed to work on it, then it was all hands on deck, and I would go there and help with that. And of course, it was the most boring thing that you can imagine, right? Right. From my perspective, but so I would do that. But in the harvest time, it was really fun, particularly during the time when we still had a donkey. My grandfather still had a donkey,
Uh-huh.
and they would. I was too young to be able to even walk the distance from the vineyard to the home where the wine cellar was.
Hmm.
And so I would just sit on the top of the donkey between the two, a basket, and of course I was eating grapes all along. And it was fun. It was
That sounds like an idyllic upbringing. It sounds.
very idyllic in that sense, yeah. And I mean, I now when I talk to winemakers, wineries, and particularly family-owned wineries, everybody in the family has a role. And I remember just recently speaking with a young winemaker. I mean, he's maybe in his late 20s.
Mhm.
And asking him, so what do you remember as your role in the vineyard? And he said, well, I was the shortest one, and because of that, I actually would be doing the lowest branches. That because of that, and then as he started getting taller, he would actually do more and more of what the adults were doing as well. But yeah, it's a very much shared labor. And it is not something that can be done fast. So it's actually a great family time.
Yes, and it isn't something that you can put a date on the calendar when, when time comes to pick the grapes, because the grapes tell you when time comes.
Right, right. And all the other elements that need to be done as well. I mean, you just go in and, hope that it's not going to be raining, but some things you can control, but some things you can't.
Most Americans certainly don't know their geography. I'll say that pretty clearly. But probably don't know much about Croatia. Could you give me a little primer on the country, where it is, what the climate is like, what the terrain is like?
Sure. So I have to preface it by saying that Croatia is a country that has a very strange shape. It's kind of like a boomerang shape.
Mm.
And that has to do with the history and Croatia being part of various empires in the past, whether most recently from Austro-Hungarian Empire or later on to under Italy on the coast for the most part. Obviously, during the Renaissance, you had the Venice Republic that controlled a lot of the coast. Um, but the country is essentially right on the 45th parallel, which for the northern part of the country is important to mention because that parallel in wine business is very important,
Mm-hmm.
and they're doing really well in terms of um, the climate and the terrain is pretty much very similar to Lower Austria or Hungary. So the
Mm-hmm.
quality of the wines is great. The type of the varieties are very similar to the ones that one has in Austria or in Hungary. So it's a little bit more known. Um, Istria, which is a large peninsula that's pretty much close to the closest to Venice.
Mhm.
It's underneath the Alps, so there's a lot of cool air coming from the Alps, but also the Mediterranean air comes in, and then the coastal is essentially terra rossa for the soil. Inland, it's clay.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm leaving Dalmatia is the last region because it is most complicated and most distinct. It is a fairly large area that goes from Zadar in the northern Dalmatia all the way to the Dubrovnik in the southern part.
Mm-hmm.
So the two varieties that are most likely to be had in America
Mm-hmm.
from Dalmatia are Plavac Mali, which is a descendant from Zinfandel and one other local variety.
Mm-hmm.
That is the most predominantly produced red in entire Croatia. It grows only in Dalmatia.
Mm-hmm.
And also Poship, which is a white wine that only grows in Dalmatia as well. All the varieties, no matter what they are going to be consistently appropriate for the Dalmatian climate, which is very high temperatures in the summer, a lot of sunny hours from 24 to 2800 sunny hours a year,
Wow.
to very dry climate, particularly the vineyards that are on the slopes overlooking the seas have a constant breeze. So
Mm.
whether they're officially eco-certified by European Union or not, most of them actually are fully organic because there is nothing you can do there other than it's a manual labor.
And most of what you import, I understand, is organic, or certainly.
We try. I mean, I'm very happy to say that Croatia in general is trying to be as sustainable as possible.
So the red wine, if you were to say somebody, let's say, likes red Zinfandel, are they gonna get some sort of a connection there when they taste the Croatian reds?
So it depends where the Zinfandel is from in California. If it's from the drier northern um, areas like Diamond Creek, for example, then there is a similarity. The Californian zins are more jammy. The Croatian, even if it's a zin or a Plavac Mali, are going to be certainly dry, very dry. They will have dark fruit flavors, so there is definitely going to be a connection there. But they're going to be much more earthy, a lot stronger tannin, and the wine itself, because of that, actually needs to age. But
Hmm.
we have wines on the market now that are from 2012 to 2019, and depending on how they were made, the 2012 is the best one we have right now. If you're into big, bold red. But the ones that are produced more recently are more likely to be in the sort of a medium body, and maybe you don't even need to decant them. Most of the other reds from that area, you really do need to decant.
So if people were out trying to buy wine from Croatia, what would they be looking for? What are the brands or the labels? What are the price points? And where could people find Croatian wine?
The shortest answer is that we have an online store that ships to most United States, and we have over 120 different labels. And one can go online and search by a variety, search by a winery. We have over 45, I believe, wineries right now. And
What's the website? What's the web? What is the website?
CroatianPremiumWine.com.
CroatianPremiumWine.com.
Correct.
Great.
So that is, and this is not just me saying, but that is the best place where one can get so many labels in one place, but then you have to ship it to yourself. If we're looking to buy it at home, then it depends on our distribution channel in each of the states. So, for example, in Massachusetts, we're working with the Boston Wine Company as our distributor. They're part of MS Walker. So 750 MS Walker has the wines there. You can find them. And in Maine, we also are selling the NAPI distributors. In Texas, we have a distributor. In California, we're our own distributor. We have a different warehouse there. So it is very possible to for people to get it if they walk into a store and tell people about it.
And I know that we met at the Boston Wine Expo. Uh, do you travel a lot? Do you have tastings and try and promote Croatian wines?
Because we're based in Massachusetts, so obviously the most of that has been done either in Massachusetts or in Maine. But I am going next week to New York, and we will be doing a tasting at a big travel festival together with Croatian National Tourist Board. So there'll be some tastings there for the public, and then some for the travel agents as well as wine writers. And we are now also we've just started a program where we basically work with wine ambassadors around the country to conduct I would call it a master class because it's really an introduction to where is Croatia, what are the regions, what varieties grow in which regions, and then let's taste maybe 6 wines. So, for example, one of our wine ambassador just held a class at a college in Napa area. And we will be certainly heading to California in first 2 weeks in May, I believe. We will go there and sort of go from north south to the places where we either have customers or where we want to establish connections with the wine schools as well as colleges, because there are wine schools who issue WSET certificates, and then there are the colleges who are actually teaching either hospitality or agriculture / enology. That would be certainly benefiting from the learning. And most of those people already are somewhat familiar with the fact that Zinfandel actually originated in Croatia.
Huh. Oh, I didn't know that. That's fascinating because I know about Primitivo, right? Which is Italian, but which is also an early form of Zinfandel.
Yes, and it's actually a really interesting story behind it. You probably heard of Mike Gergich, who of Gergich Fields, who was one of the 2 winners at the Judgment of Paris. His Chardonnay received the best of show, and this is the year that actually put California, United States, on the wine map of the world. Well, Mike is originally from Croatia, in fact, from a village very close to where I come from. And when he first arrived to California, he looked at the Zinfandel plant and said, "This has to be related to Plavac-Mali." And but there was no way to prove it. It was just his gut reaction. And he has been very stubborn in a way about that, and has worked with UC Davis. And in the early 90s, they have started doing a study. It was the first time when it was possible to do a genetic study on plants. And they did a study between California, Italy, and Croatia, and actually found out that genetically it is exactly the same.
Um, and going back to Croatia, what would it be like to visit? What advice can you give if somebody wants to go and travel and visit Croatia?
For anyone that's interested in wine and food aspects, spring is in particular a lovely time to visit because, I mean, fall is great because the harvest is happening, but that's also the time when winemakers have the least amount of time to spend talking with visitors.
Right.
And so if anybody is really a wine lover, I would highly recommend going in the spring. The weather is beautiful. The sea is certainly warmer than it is in Massachusetts. And so you can actually be on the beaches anytime after the 1st of May, but a lot of wine lovers go even in April. And you certainly avoid big uh, bigger crowds on the beaches and in the historic towns.
Hmm.
Uh, I found out that majority of Americans, when they go visit, they tend to start with Dalmatia and do the Dubrovnik to Split route. And I can understand how that makes sense because that's just a dramatically beautiful uh scenery, really tall mountains, really beautiful blue sea, beaches, the Mediterranean climate. So you have, in my house here, you can see the orange tree right in front of it. We have a lemon tree in the back. It's like, your classic a Californian, Italian, Spanish, Mediterranean, basically climate.
Hmm.
Because historically there were parts of the coast that were either under Italian or Venetian rule, uh, or part of the Dubrovnik Renaissance Republic, which was its own force. You have similarity across all of the little smaller towns, because the architecture is relatively similar, but they're all somewhat different. And some of them you can see the remnants of Greek settlements, the wall. In Split, for example, basically the entire uh, Split is a short for a Latin word espalato, which means palace, and there was a palace that was one of the emperors built for his retirement, Roman emperors, and Split, the whole downtown Split is actually built on the Roman palace. And the same kind of stones that were there 2,000 years ago are there now. And so there's something really amazing about the fact that you're walking on the same stone paths. And then you go to Dubrovnik, which is a Renaissance town, which, of course, has its own architecture.
Mm.
So usually people go to do that tour, whether they start in Split and end in Dubrovnik or vice versa. The next phase is usually Split and Zagreb and Istria. Uh, One can fly into Zagreb and being in Istria within like 2 hours from the airport. Zagreb is essentially a Middle European city, which is very similar to um, Prague or Vienna, built basically under the same ruling. A lot of museums, great food scene, great music scene, a lot of culture, great vineyards right outside. Either going toward Dalmatia or going to Istria, which is a little bit in the north. And then Istria is like a little fairy tale. I mean, the inland is kind of like Tuscany, although they don't like to be compared themselves to Tuscany. But the little hills, the little medieval cities on top of the hills, overlooking the vineyards underneath. It is truly special, and the cuisine there is very similar to North Italian because it is so by and the climate is essentially the same.
Sure. Are there any foods that you'd recommend? Are there specialties that are are must try if you're visiting Croatia?
So that's again a question that has to be almost answered four different ways because
Mhm.
the four different wine regions are based on geographies, and the geographies and climates are very different. So
Mhm.
the north to basically be to answer this in the shortest way is very similar to middle continental climate, and there are things like the meats that they produce in that area, they're just phenomenal.
Mhm.
um and then you're dealing with Istria, which again has both coast and the inland, but it's very much northern Italian like.
Mhm.
They certainly have truffles there. And they have their own version of pasta, which is called foodie, and you can have it creamy, which pairs phenomenally well with Malvasia, their wine, or if you had beef dishes with that, then they usually pair it with Tehran,
Mhm.
which is the red wine. And in Dalmatia, being essentially coastal, Even the valleys where the wine is grown, maybe one hill, one row behind, away from the sea. It is still a very much a Mediterranean climate, so you're dealing with a lot of veggies, everything fresh, a lot of fruits as well, seafood, obviously, but also lamb. So the one dish that is very famous in Croatia, in Dalmatia, is a seafood black risotto because it's done with cuttlefish or calamari, and it actually is black from when
Uh,
we eat it.
right.
So it's pretty dramatic
Sure.
to serve. And then obviously there's all kind of fish that they catch there on a daily basis. And when you go to restaurant, I always say to people, don't ask anything else other than what came from the boat this morning. And then have them prepare it on the grill and then decide on a side dish. But other than that, you really don't need to know anything more.
Oh,
Um,
that
and
sounds
then,
great.
yes, I agree. And then the traditional way to cook a meal is it's called peka, Peka,
Mm.
and it's a word for a metal dome. And so you essentially create you put it inside a heart, and you can do it based on seafood like octopus, and then add, potatoes and other veggies to it. You let it sit. You create a fire, and then when it gets to the cinder points, you basically cover the dome. The meal is in the dish underneath, and then you cover it with a dome and cover that with cinders as well, and just cook like an hour and a half or so, and that is just to die for.
What is that called again?
It's called kreka meal, and again, it could be either seafood or lamb or mixed of proteins, whatever. And it is something that everybody wants to have an experience at least once when they go there.
Yeah.
But it is something that needs to be ordered in advance because it really depends on. It takes several hours to get it done.
Sure, sure.
But it's a fun thing to do, particularly if you're sitting around the cart and waiting for it, while obviously prosciutto and the cheese cheeses or cheeses, all of that, just a classic Mediterranean style with olives and olive oil and fresh baked bread. I'm actually starting to get hungry now. It's lunch.
Yeah. Oh, me too. It's getting close to the lunchtime. Well, this has been terrific. A really informative and fun interview. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything you wanted to talk about that we didn't get to?
Um, so I would like to encourage everybody to go and visit Croatia. I think there are certainly plenty of programs out there. I see more and more travel agents doing the what is called now wine tours to Croatia, as opposed to being the Dalmatia tour. They're adding more and more wineries to that, and I'm very happy to see that because we can't visit a country without knowing its off food offering of any kind.
Sure.
So it's great to actually experience that. Croatia has certainly been, even though one can buy wine from other countries there, it's been really smart about educating people who come and visit about the local wine and local wineries.
Mhm.
So there are a lot of wineries that do tasting with tasting Zoom, etc. We always say to people particularly people who are following us and are part of our online community, if you are going there and you have your own itinerary, send me the itinerary via email, and I'll be happy to let you know where to stop. Uh, and again, with the caveat that if they do it early in the year, they will actually get more attention from people involved in the business as opposed to getting a person that's working for the summer in the tasting room.
Mhm.
But also there are companies who are starting to do more and more tours, whether it's in Dalmatia, in Istria, or all over Croatia, and we work with all of them. So if anybody have questions, I'm happy to connect them. Actually, I'm pleased to announce that we are going to be posting an island hopping tour on a yacht end of August. There's one travel agent that was able to get a charter. Most of them are booked 2 years out, and this one didn't happen to be there. So we're doing it end of August. So if anybody's interested, look us up, and we have not yet posted it actually online, but we'll within a day or so. Um, but to travel through Croatia, there are a lot of people, and I'm one of them, that actually prefer doing it in my own car and at my own terms, and it is certainly very easy. It's not because I'm Croatian, but but people are very friendly and really enjoy having Americans there in particular. It's been a relatively recent trend. Um, a lot of people studied associated Croatia and Dubrovnik to Game of Thrones because that's where it was filmed. But it was in Split and Makarska and plenty of other places.
Mm-hmm.
Star Wars was filmed there. There were a bunch of other movies who were supposedly taking place in Spain or Italy, and they shot them in Croatia because it was easier for them. One of the biggest satisfaction for me in this business is that when I get a phone call from somebody that says, "My father's birthday uh, is at X time, and we'd like to wine served from his area." What is really fun is, so they buy the wine, I help them choose, blah, blah, blah. But the best thing is they call us back. They actually call back. They don't just send an email. They call back and thanking us for making their family be so happy about that. So it's certainly a benefit of being in this business, and it gives me the opportunity to certainly cherish my two countries.
That's great. Oh, and one thing. So you mentioned that the picture that you have behind you, that is where you're from?
Yes, that's actually my grandfather comes from this village. It's called Gradec. It's on the Makarska Riviera, and this is where our house is.
Well, it looks like an absolutely gorgeous view.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. I mean, my typical place is literally sitting facing the other way around and having my coffee or a midday drink, and certainly the sunsets there at night with the wines are phenomenal.
So, well, thank you so much. This has been terrific. I really enjoyed talking with you, and certainly, as I said, now Croatia has moved up on my list of places where I would like to visit. I hope it does with everyone too. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, and genially.
Givali, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Marina. That was fantastic. Croatia has definitely moved up on my list of places to visit. I'm Jay Fedigan, and I'll see you next time on Foodie Time.